It's time for the Give and Go podcast.
Hey, welcome to the Give and Go basketball podcast. I am Mitch Shreve. I am your host, guiding you through this fast-paced, razzle-dazzle, no-holds-bar discussion on all and everything basketball. And I would like to introduce you to the two stars of the show, two of the most knowledgeable basketball guys I have ever met. We have Ryan Steele and Ben Sperry. Now, if you're watching this on YouTube, you'll probably see Ben is joining us from afar. Ben, I'm going to go ahead and start with you and just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about your basketball background, where you come from, what you know.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch. I played, a little bit of high school and then 1 year college basketball, small D3 school. But my real experience the last about 7 or 8 years has been coaching high school basketball. Coached down in the DC area for a few years and then came home to Pennsylvania, where I was actually both an assistant and then a head coach of a varsity basketball program. But obviously a big fan of the game since we were very young. Followed it very closely, loved the NBA especially, been a big fan, and not only in terms of just the play itself, but I love statistics. I love, watching what I call good basketball at all levels. So that's my background.
And I'm just gonna say this one thing. So Ben and I, Ben had already started down at TC. I had been coaching up here junior high for a couple years. I actually played against these two guys at neighboring schools growing up. And so I knew them back then, but I didn't really know them. They were a couple years older than me. So I was mostly sent in. They were seniors when I was a sophomore. So I was mainly put in to foul them when we played. But Ben, we both kind of got our varsity level starting here in PA under Lane Baker. And that's how we kind of became close. But Ben was actually at my wedding. And then a couple years later when Ben and Derek kind of took the helm, that's when Ryan came along and we met Ryan. So Ryan, go ahead and go your background.
Yeah, I mean, kind of to echo what Ben said, played high school basketball with him. We actually met in elementary school. We played all through that intramural ball together. I think that's where the love for the game really started. Phone convos in junior high for hours about the game of the night. And that just leads into 10, 15 years later after high school. He gave me an opportunity to come on a coaching staff that he was actually leaving. And that's what I'm doing right now, coaching varsity basketball. And the same as that, I love the stats, the numbers, the silly numbers, attempts of corner threes, just every little thing basketball. And I think that's the idea of the podcast, is everything basketball. Yeah. I mean, the celebrations on the sideline, I like everything about the game. And that's really my background into it.
Yeah. And you're going to see this come out. I'm not going to go into too much depth right now, because you're going to see this throughout the whole length of the podcast on just how much fun we have about talking basketball. I can remember our first year working together. We're down here in the man cave in my basement, and we always have our first coaches meeting of the year down here, minus this year due to the pandemic. But I just remember the first time Ben came down here, and he's like, "Oh, wait till you meet Steele. Steele is I'm a insane North Carolina basketball fan, same as Steele." So he's like, "You guys are," and we spent most of that night just sitting here in the corner.
In our own little world, talking about who's your favorite Tar Heel team of all time.
we had a blast that night. But then a couple weeks later, fast forward to our first game at Northwestern, and the three of us actually sat next to one another on the bench up at Northwestern. And man, the three of us, we were just having a blast. Just going back and forth with things. And then, post getting into the start of how this podcast started, getting into the the aspect of afterwards, we always go out for dinner after a game and just talking back and forth. We got into some great discussions on basketball. So I actually was a Johnny come lately into this process. Ben or Ryan, one of you, I don't care which one.
I mean, really, again, dating back to junior high convos, we always had that just free-flowing conversation back and forth, whether we agreed or disagreed on certain things, that we always just talk about what we thought was cool or unique about basketball. I think the Last Dance doc kind of got us into talking more about, nuances of the game.
Yeah.
And we kind of just one night, right, just, hey, we should record the stuff that we say to each other.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I moved back to the DC area and we had been talking on the phone at one point when I was traveling at night. And after we had talked about basketball for a couple hours, I was
at least
like,
90 minutes.
I was like, we should just make this into a podcast. I wanted to actually bring this up. We should actually just this is the type of conversation, half an hour to an hour long. We should probably shorten it, but could probably be good podcast material because we have these in-depth basketball discussions and, just hypotheticals, like different things that we like, what we don't like, different players. And we just love doing that.
So you actually did 2 episodes and then never really went anywhere.
The pilot never got picked.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're in the vault. They're in the vault.
Yeah,
they're waiting for a really
vault.
good production team. And Mitch being the guy that he is, maybe he'll push these things over the top for us.
So over the summertime anyways, Ben was up with his new bride and we were sitting around talking and they had invited me to be a guest on their podcast back in the spring, I think, when you had originally done it. And it was going to be an episode all about North Carolina. So like Ben said, me being me, I got all fired up and was like, yeah, let's do this. So I'm pretty sure I hit you up probably about 20 times. Like, you guys still doing this? When are you doing this? So here we are now. I finally talked them into retrying to start this up. And then I don't know near as much as you guys do about the game of basketball. I know a lot, but nowhere near as much. So I'm just going to play host and have fun that way while these guys can do their thing. So anyways, getting into the show a little bit, we have a ton of cool things for you this episode. Just as the inaugural, it's kind of almost like the get to know you episode. And then, in the future episodes, we'll get just into everything. And there's no holds bar when it comes to this. We're just going to talk everything basketball. If that has anything to do with basketball, we'll probably get into it, even back into the Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, McDonald's commercials. That'll probably come up at some point in the future, I have a feeling. But all right, we're going to go ahead and take our first break real quick, and then we're going to get back into a draft, and I'll explain the details of that when we get back. Hey, welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Again, I am Mitch Shreve, along with the 2 basketball geniuses, Ben Sperry, Ryan Steele. Ryan with me, Ben being the one zooming in for all of you watching this on YouTube. So our first segment, I said before we went to break, was it's going to be a draft. And this is going to be a draft. I called it the All Decades team. So these guys are going to have to draft between players from the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and 2010s till present. They're going to take one person per decade. So they'll have 7 total players. One of the picks have to be a non-Hall of Fame player. And we are going to do a snake draft style. So they did have to do a lot of research on, just in case somebody took somebody early. So there's going to be no repeats here. And then what we'll do is we'll let it sit for a week. I'll post the rosters, and then we'd hope to get your fans' input on who drafted the better team. And we'll do a little grading probably in our next episode after everything calms down. We'll see what happens. But all right, via coin toss, Ben, I have you down as the first pick.
Hey.
Sorry, Steele. Now they can go in any order. It's not going 50s, 60s, 70s on up. It can be any order. And the Hall of Fame player, I should have said this earlier, the Hall of Fame player cannot be a current player in the league. They have to be retired. So Ben, go ahead and take pick number 1.
Well, as you'll find out if you listen to me talk a lot about basketball at some point, I'm a huge Michael Jordan fan, grew up being a huge Michael Jordan fan. And I did have slight pause here because
You did not.
because there's other great players, not only from the modern era, but I have a soft spot for some older players too. I'm not going to say too much because I don't want my shit to get stolen. But
lies.
right here, I think it's an easy choice. To me, the greatest player of all time is Michael Jordan, so that's who I'm going to take with my first pick from the 1990s.
Ooh, 1990s.
Yeah, 90. Okay.
We could. I'm honestly the fact checker of this whole thing. We could actually pull up his stats, but I don't think that's necessary. I think everybody knows what FJ did. Steele, to you.
Okay. So I'm glad he took MJ. I'm going to take the real greatest player of all time, LeBron James. With my.
It's a good pick. I mean, look, it's a good pick. And honestly, being second and third is not bad on this because, you can stack to some superbly good players.
Okay.
Another shot.
So my 10s is gone. This is where the strategy comes in.
Yes. All right.
Because I'm not just going, and I don't know how you feel about this either. I'm not just going 5 best players. I'm trying to win a game with fit on the court. Agreed?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
I think not only do you want to have fit so that you could win in any style or play in any era, but I think you want to be able to say, this group can be versatile, like you can do it against different types of teams too.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So second pick, I'm going with the Bird man, Larry Bird in the 80s.
Interesting. Okay.
And LeBron needs to find them shooters, man. Who better to do it?
Okay. 2 elite passers and one of the greatest shooters of all time.
All tied together. You'll see.
Okay. So that puts me back on the board. All right, I got a lot of decades I got to fill out, and I'm trying to think who would be most likely to be next on the board anyways at this point, not to mess myself up too much down the line. But, here, I actually contemplate if this were a true historical draft, I do think Michael Jordan is the greatest of all time. I mean, LeBron's right there. But if you just wanted to go with the greatest athlete that played basketball possibly ever, it's actually going back in time, and then we go with Wilt Chamberlain here. 7 foot tall. He was Shaq before Shaq, but I think he was in better condition his entire career. He could play an entire game that was way faster than the game that Shaq played. Incredible skills and talent that I think could translate into any era, and you can't say that about every player from some of the older generations.
That's his guy.
Yeah.
And,
we've had this combo for a while.
Look, and there's knocks on Wilt. Obviously, Russell beat him a lot back then. But I think if you put Wilt with the right other superstars, and in this case, we're going to have them, he brings so much at both sides of the floor that I just think, he's a hard to miss player here, even though there's obviously other greats. And then luckily, I have another pick, even though that gets my 60s out of the way.
Yeah, I think I know who you're saying.
And I just don't want to mess this up because I don't know which era or which. Well, you're off on the 80s though, so that means I can kind of pull it off on the 80s, which means I can do this. I'm gonna go.
I can do this.
And you've already taken your 2010s as well, which means I don't have to pick him till later.
Yes, it's true.
So that means I'm gonna go to more modern era then. And I'm going to go with
I know who he's taking. He's acting like he's not
I'm going to go with Tim Duncan.
Oh,
Did I surprise you there?
I thought you were going to go Steph or Duncan. I figured.
So the thing is, you already took your 10s. So I got Steph on the reload at some point later. So, and what I'm going to do with Tim is I'm going to be able to pair him with Wilt. We already know he can do the Twin Towers format. He did that with David Robinson. Also, he brings a lot to the table on the other side. So like Will had a little bit more. I mean, I don't know if flashy is the right word, but he's I'm gonna go get a bunch of buckets. Tim Duncan can play any style. He's proved that throughout his career. If I put Wilt on the bench at some point, I can play Tim at the 5. He can play the 4. He can step out and shoot a little bit. He can play more in space if he had to, especially if we get a younger version of him.
Big Fundy.
I really like my 2 bigs, and I feel pretty strong with that pairing. So I got now, I think the 60s, the 2000s, and the 90s off the board for myself.
Yes, that's what I have you down as. And remember, I'm the judge and jury on this. Not really. I'm making that up. But all right.
So
Ryan,
now I
you
get 2. Whew, we gotta start filling some things out now. That's good. I like that. Wilt and Duncan. Okay. We're thinking now. All right. I'm going to combat Wilt with, to me, the best defensive center of all time.
Ooh.
The dream, Hakeem Olajuwon going.
Not Alonzo Mourning?
I didn't say my favorite center. I said
no, you're right. You're right. And that's a good pick. So wait, is that a 90s pick then?
It's my 90s.
Yeah, he's a 90s.
Well, it has to be. I guess you already had Birdman. So okay.
Yeah,
that's a really good pick because he's also, extraterrestrial on offense too, with his ability to hit you with every combo move in the post. So it's great pick.
Okay.
I like
now, even though Braun can run the point, and he will have the ball in my squad, I'm going to go with the original LeBron James, the first LeBron James, Oscar Robertson, the GOAT at his time to me. Big O. We got triple doubles everywhere on this team.
Okay.
I'm a big O fan myself.
So
I take that back. I'm a big O fan myself.
What's funny is I had when I looked at the 60s board, and I was pretty certain I was going to get Wilt, unless somehow the picks just didn't fall right. But my next was actually Jerry West. Right after that, even though Big O is awesome, because I was trying to think who would fit best in the modern game if we had to play that way.
Right.
And I think the Big O is a really good pick because I think at the very least he gives you Westbrook stats, if not the same exact style.
Right.
He's a big guard. He can rebound. He can pass. He can play. I was thinking Jerry West though, because he could handle the ball and shoot, and I don't think that goes out of style, in a relatively modern way considering when he played.
Yeah.
So Ben, before you make your next 2 picks, just for all of you following along at home, so far Ryan has taken from the 60s Oscar Robinson, Larry Bird from the 80s, Hakeem Olajuwon from the 90s, and LeBron James from the 2010s. Now, the way we set it up is you had to take a person from the majority of their playing career, so where they've played the most time at.
Or at least to me, the peak of their
or at least the peak of their career. And then Ben has taken from the 60s Wilt, 90s the great Michael Jordan, and then the 2000s the big fundamental Tim Duncan. All right, Ben, your next 2 picks. Go.
All right, so and let's not take this the wrong way. Part of this is strategic because I already know what decades he picked, so this isn't necessarily what my next pick would be if we just had a whole list.
Same with me.
But what I'm going to go with is a guy from the 70s here, because I already got my bigs, and I got, Jordan, obviously, to take a lot of the scoring up. I'm going to pick a guy that's kind of like, it might surprise you. He's a swing guy that can play a little bit guard, a little bit of forward. John Havlicek.
Oh, no, I just pointed at it.
No way.
And
no way. I thought it was going to be the other one, but
because I feel like he could bring something to the table. I mean, obviously it was a great when he played, but I think he could bring something to the table today still, as like a big swing forward guard type, to play good defense, grab rebounds, pass the ball, get some buckets. So I like him as an all-around player from the 70s because I don't need another big. I mean, Kareem would be next. If you went purely on that, or Unseld or one of these other guys, there's some other guards that fit too, but I already have Jordan, so I don't need another score necessarily. So
it's funny.
I got Havlicek there.
Not too long ago, I was just lying around on Wikipedia doing my thing and watching some old basketball stuff on YouTube and whatever. And Havlicek was a guy I always heard of and knew about. My grandfather's a huge Celtics guy, and if he's listening, hey grandpa. But anyways, I just everybody was talking. I can't remember where it was at when I was looking, but they were talking about how great he was. I looked up his stats. Dude was unreal.
He gets lost in the lore of Boston between Russell and Bird because he was in between them. Yeah. And I believe after Russell retired, I think he only won 1 or 2, which not only, but for the Boston. For what Bird and Russell did, he gets lost in the shuffle of a great, storied franchise.
Yeah, if you have a chance, go look at his stats, listeners.
The funny thing is, Ben, I have on this sheet, I have 5 guys in the 70s. And I have Hondo and Dr. J, and I pointed at both of them. I said he's taken one of these 2.
Yeah. And Dr. J would also be maybe even a better version maybe here. But I was like, I already got Jordan. I don't know if I need 2 guys.
Havlicek gives you shooting where Dr. J really did.
Yeah. So, I was trying to get some balance there. Next, I don't think there's a chance I'm going to lose my 50s guy or my non-Hall of Fame guy.
Big bet.
So I'm gonna go down to the 2. I'm just gonna get my shooter now. You can bring the ball up for me too. Why not? But I'm just gonna go with Steph Curry right here for 2010s. There's other obviously great players in the modern day, but I think in terms of just his ability to really shoot it, do it off the dribble, there's never been a better shooter. He's spectacular. I've loved watching him play since he was at Davidson. I try to think that I play like him. Sometimes I'm playing pickup, but that's not ever actually true. And I think he just fits well with this group because, we can run him off ball too. If I have Jordan or Havlicek, or even just play out of the post with Timmy or Wilt. And you just get a ton of threes for this guy off of these guys. So I think that's going to go with my 2010s.
All right. Ryan, before you make your 2 picks, I just want to remind you guys, Ben, you have 2 picks left. Ryan, you have 3. And you guys have yet to pick your non-Hall of Famer. So just want to throw that out there.
I feel like there's no chance that we're stealing each other's non-Hall of Famers.
Well, I also got to remember what decades we got now, but yeah.
Yeah, I have 2000s, the 50s, and the 70s.
Yes, it's true. Yep, 2000s, 50s, 70s.
All
Ben,
right.
you have the 80s and 50s.
Since Ben's taken from the 2000s and the 70s, strategy comes in right here.
Oh, yeah.
We might not agree on who the best player of the 50s is, but we might. So I'm going to go 50s.
Ooh.
I'm going to try to combat some of that Wilt size. Maybe Hakeem has to guard Duncan, I'm going to go with old George Mikan. Bring that big old stiff body out here, big boy. Let's go. Let's go, George.
Can I just say one thing? The Mikan might be my all-time favorite.
Hey, he has a great drill. It is a great finishing around the basket drill.
You can't go wrong with it. All right.
Especially if you modify it. You get the reverse Mikans. You go a little bit further out. Yeah.
Dude had one thing right for him. All right.
Okay.
Good 50s pick.
And then I'm going to round out my starting 5 with RIP, my guy, Kobe Bean Bryant. We're fighting Jordan with the dude who tried to be like him.
Yeah. And if you're going to get a close enough replica that would pass, in a lot of cases, that's perfect. And, they'd compete hard. Maybe after we get our whole team done and we analyze this in more detail, I'd say the one downside is he's going to try to prove he's better Jordan the whole time and mess up your whole team chemistry.
Right. It pained me not to take D Wade there, although I didn't know what era you'd say, 2000s or 2010s, because he was prime Wade winning a finals by himself in the 2000s,
And I know Ryan is a huge Miami Heat Dwayne Wade fade. Okay,
that's why it hurt. That's why it hurt. And I'm also of the belief that the gap between Jordan and Kobe is a lot bigger than the one between Kobe and D Wade.
Mm-hmm.
If we really break down the efficiency and what they actually did defensively and offensively and sharing the ball, I think it's a lot closer than people think it is.
But nonetheless, you still went with Kobe.
I went with Kobe.
All right, Ben, your final 2 picks.
Wait, you got closed out, right?
I got one
he's
more. I got the
one more.
seven.
You got
Seven
one
he's
more?
left.
And it
Okay,
also has to
okay.
be his non-Hall of Fame.
Yes.
All right, so I played around with this for a while, and the problem is it's hard to even find a player from the 50s that you think can play all eras, and then it becomes doubly so if it's not a Hall of Famer, right? The Hall of Famers, you can at least think of a couple that you think might be able to stick in a certain role.
Right.
If you go, but then you go to other decades. I mean, we're leaving a lot of 80s superstars on the board right now.
Oh,
Magic
so
Johnson,
many.
Magic Johnson's still on the board, and I really should pick him here. And it's stupid that I'm not going to, but I'm not because of the way the game's set up, which is that I don't really think I can think of anybody from the 50s that didn't make the Hall of Fame. I don't even know who that would be.
I
And
feel like
wanna
they
have
all
some-
just made the Hall of Fame back then.
Well, and at the very least, I want somebody that I think can somehow bring something to the table. So I'm actually going to bring my non-Hall of Famer out from the 80s.
Ooh.
And it's going to be a guy that might have gotten there had he not had a lot of issues. He's going to fill out my bigs. He's a guy named Roy Tarpley that was really, really good for a really short period of time. I don't even know, 20 and 10, more than 20 and 10. And he did it on pretty high efficiency for the Dallas Mavericks. But he didn't last very long because I think he had drug issues. So Roy Tarpley,
Never heard of him before.
he was a beast in the you gotta look. He wore some sweet rec specs too, if I'm not mistaken. He was a sweet player, so that's what I went with because I think he could play still.
Well, I'm looking him up right now.
Even though it just totally meant I left a Magic Johnson on the table. I basically decided I had enough guards with Curry and Jordan and Havlicek to play a little bit of handle.
Oh, big time rec specs.
So that's what I'm going to go with, and that also allows it to be more fun.
Hey,
So
let me just say this: his biggest accolade was he was the NBA Sixth Man of the Year in 1998.
and what did he
Or
average?
88, sorry.
And what did he
88.
average that year off the bench? Something
Well,
ridiculous, like 19 and 9 or something, right?
Let me keep looking here for his. So timeout. Let me see. I can't find his stats right off the moment, but yeah, he did. He only spent a short time. A lot of bouncing around, but NBA Sixth Man of the Year, NBA All Rookie First Team 87. A lot of European stats and accolades out the yin yang over
Yeah,
here.
he missed what would have been the prime of his career because he was suspended for 3 years right in the middle for substance abuse.
Yeah.
I think this one was a reach. I'm calling this a reach on Roy Tarpley.
Hey, I just wanted to make sure he was remembered somehow because he was a ball player. Maybe it was a reach, but I can live with that. So I'm gonna finish out my 50s then with and I was kind of stretching on this one as well, but I was trying to think of a guy that I thought might be able to compete.
That's
part
right.
of the problem is even the bigs were a lot smaller back then.
Yeah.
But the only guy that can say from really the mid 50s to the mid 60s that they beat prime Bill Russell before Wilt finally got over the top was a guy named Bob Pettit and the St. Louis Hawks.
Yep.
And Bob Pettit back then was a rebounding machine, but they played really fast. I think today he'd be more like a tweener forward that could shoot a little bit. So he might be able to step out and shoot a little bit, but still be able to rebound. And they played really fast back then. So I think he'd be fine in terms of running up and down. Maybe a little bit of a random pick too, but I feel like, it gives me another guy that can do a little bit something perhaps.
So let me just say this one thing. Actually, I have two things here. One thing is when I first brought this to Ryan and Ben, and they got to their researching, the fight started at Bob Cousy for the 50s, and none of you took Bob Cousy. So that's an interesting thing in itself. But then, so I got here we go. Roy.
Let me just explain why though. I didn't want to go with Cousy because, as much as it was probably due in part to the rules then, and he was elite for his day, what he was doing in terms of the dribbling and stuff, it just doesn't look like it would translate beyond a couple generations of basketball. Like, look, maybe he could still do it against pretty high, like you transplanted him, maybe he could still play at a decently high level, but I can't imagine him being a dominant point guard, even in the 80s, nonetheless today.
We were on the same
right hand.
Same wave here. I had two names for the 50s, Pettit and Mikan.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't have went with Wilt, I probably would have went with Pettit instead of Mike.
And I guess my reasoning with Pettit is, he doesn't have to have the ball in his hands,
Right.
at least bringing it up. I mean, maybe he plays goofy footed or whatever, but if he can
Right.
step out and shoot as a 6'9" forward and still bang a little bit and run, I feel like he can actually have a chance to play with a more modern basketball team. And this isn't to take anything away from the previous generations. If you don't have Bob Cousy, you don't have a lot of the guys after him. I mean, he was able to do amazing things with basketball in terms of what they did back then, great passer and stuff like that. But I just wanted to see if I could build a team that I thought could play today as well as in an older era. Yeah. So that's why I'm going to go with Bob Pettit.
Hey, makes sense to me. And here's Roy Tarpley's 1988 six-man stats, and I can see why he did it. He averaged over 11 rebounds a game, over 13 points a game, over 1 block, over 1 steal, over 1 assist.
Who was that? The Mavs?
That was with the Mavericks. He played his entire NBA career with the Mavs. But yeah, Ben, you were correct. He played for 5 seasons, mid 80s up to the early 90s, and then was suspended for 3 seasons due to substance abuse. Came back in 94, 95, and then got suspended again and went to Greece. But I mean, some impressive stats. His last season in Dallas before that 3 years, so this was 90, 91, he was averaging over 20 points a game. And over 11 rebounds a game. So he was averaging a double-double. So I'll give you that.
Pretty rare the time I hear a player that I've basically never heard of.
And I mean, those Dallas teams.
Rolando Blackman's son.
Derek Harper young Derek Harper was pretty good on it. They also had Sam Perkins. That was their squad. They weren't. Yeah. They had some teams that were half decent.
Right.
I think Adrian Dantley might have ended up on them at some point when they lost.
Maybe Mark Aguirre.
Well, I think it was Aguirre, and then he got traded for.
He got traded to the Pistons, right? Yeah. Oh, right. Yep.
And then in the year that he won 6 man, they were actually real good. They lost in the conference finals to the Lakers in 7. So like he was a big time contributor on a team that was actually pushed. One of the greater teams of all time to the limit. So
all right, and so now we're going to move into Ryan's final pick here.
My non-Hall of
Famer.
All right,
this will close out the all decades draft here on the Give and Go Basketball Podcast.
So how you got into nobody took Magic in the 80s, and there left a lot of 80s superstars. Same in the 70s, arguably the greatest player of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, is not on either of our lists, only because of strategy. But my non-Hall of Famer is from the 70s, and the only reason I took him, this is so dumb, but I played with him on NBA 2K a few years ago, and like an old school team, and I just started playing, and he never missed a shot. So today, and I remember in the game, the commentary in the game was like, oh, he never was in the Hall of Fame. So I remembered that, and I checked today's stats. Lou Hudson, sweet Lou Hudson from the 70s. My man, 6-time NBA All-Star, All-NBA second team in 1970. Got his jersey retired. Career stats, 20 points a game over a 12 to 13-year career. 4.5 rebounds, 3 assists a night. Sweet Lou with the sweet stroke. We're in there. Let's go.
Actually, I'm kind of curious why he didn't make the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Relatively lenient to get into the NBA Hall of Fame, first of all, compared to
20
some other
points a night
sports.
in the 70s? Come on now.
At first, with your description, I thought for a second you were going to go with World Be Free, who also had the coolest name.
It's true.
From back then, and he put up a ton of points.
One of my best friend's dad's favorite player of all time.
So just to wrap this up, go ahead, Ben.
No, I was just gonna say it's harder than you think it is to think of non-Hall of Fame greats, and you're tempted to do it by going with somebody relatively modern, but then you lose out on like a 2000s superstar, right?
Yeah.
Like I have a really big soft spot for Jason Terry, and I really thought about taking him, but then I was like, what the hell would I'd be giving up Shaq, Tim Duncan, Kobe, and KG,
Right.
or Dirk Nowitzki, right, to take him there. So,
and that's another most notable player I think was, because I figured one of you would take him, was Shaq.
Oh,
yeah.
But I know I can, you know, I know
if I wouldn't have already had Wilt, I would have went Shaq. Like if
Yeah.
Wilt got off the
Right.
board, I think I would have went Shaq instead of Tim Duncan.
That's the fun of the game. So let me just give a quick recap here of who took who. Ben took Pettit, Chamberlain, Havlicek, Tarpley, Jordan, Duncan, Curry. Ryan took Mikan, Robinson, Hudson, Bird, Olajuwon, Kobe, and LeBron James. I am going to put these on our Facebook page, on our on the YouTube description. You know, I'll have them everywhere that's humanly possible. I'll have them listed. We'd like to get your thoughts. You can email us. You can comment on our Facebook page. Our email is thegiveandgo3 at gmail.com. Feel free to email us. Let us know who you would think would win. And like I said, we're going to do a breakdown for our next episode, and we'll let you know who we think would win. Non-biased, gentlemen, non-biased on this.
Hold on, real quick.
Yes.
Your starting five is everybody but Pettit and Tarpley, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I like that. Who would your starting five be?
Everybody but Mikan and Lou Hudson.
I figured. All right.
Yeah.
I got a big and a guard to come off the bench.
And this is going to actually take us into our next break. Thanks for tuning in. Give and Go Basketball Podcast. We'll be right back.
Him, wide open three, got the lead.
Get buckets.
And they were going crazy on the sideline. It was so cool. Cool.
We're just getting a recap here from last night's game. Anyways, welcome back to the Give and Go Podcast. Again, I'm your host, Mitch Shreve, along with the stars of the show, the very knowledgeable and very talented Ben Sperry.
I don't know about all this.
And our other very
he's
talented,
definitely
knowledgeable Ryan Steele. All right, now I just want to give a little background to this. I thought about paying for a couple different apps that gave background noises, but I thought, why do that when I could just do the voices myself? So we are entering a segment that we're probably going to feature quite often on our show. It's called the lightning round. So let's get ready for the lightning round. All right, lightning round. So this is going to be just faster paced questions, kind of like this or that. What do you think about this style? These guys have no knowledge about what I'm going to ask them. I came up with these questions myself. I just want you guys to know that if you agree on them, that is perfectly fine, but it makes for a crappy show. So
I'll argue the other side no matter what.
No, I'm kidding.
Might as well.
If you guys agree, that's fine. If not, you know, we can debate it and talk about it. But if you agree, hey, you're allowed to do that. So, all right, the first lightning round question, we kind of got this a little bit with the with your backgrounds and stuff, but if you had to choose one, college or NBA, you could only watch basketball, one of these for the rest of your life, what would you choose? College or NBA? Ben, I know yours already.
Okay, so question: who's
Yes.
going first? We going at the same time?
Ben go first, and then
Okay,
Ryan
yeah.
will come in second.
So my thing, it would be the NBA for me. Is that all I say, or do I explain?
Lightning, dude. You gotta
Hey,
be
it's lightning
quick.
round.
Get
You
in
do what you
now.
want to do, man. I don't know.
I mean, NBA.
NBA.
Young Ryan is going college. Mature adult Ryan is going NBA.
That is a great
Yeah.
answer. That surprised me. I think you both know that I'm going college all the way, because I couldn't. But I can't even go a day without checking in on the Tar Heels.
So-
Recruiting, whatever. But anyways,
So not to take away from lightning speed, but what I was gonna say is this. And
no,
this
this
is
is what it's for.
This is a much longer thing. Is that, you know, the NBA to me is the best basketball, but like that doesn't mean necessarily that you enjoy it the most. Like, and I always make this hypothetical, right? Like if you
Right.
have like you went to a school or you just have like this long standing like fandom of a particular team in college, I can understand why you'd enjoy watching that team play more.
Yeah.
Just as I would say, like if your son or your own team that you're coaching is playing high school, you might enjoy that more in college or the NBA, even though it's objectively much, much worse basketball. You would not want to pay to watch random high school play most of the time.
Well, one thing that sets Ben and I apart as human beings is Ben's love for offense and my love for just straight up balls to the wall defense.
Well, here's the thing: is it defense when
This
the
is where
offense?
this is where me and Ben agree.
Is it good defense if the offense is just really bad? Because
and that's where I find fault with the NBA, because the offense, the shooters are just so good.
They're so good.
Yeah,
and there's so much spacing that you can't cover ground on.
Well, to the point where you can't play help defense. You can't, you can't do all that stuff. So I enjoy the help defense. I enjoy watching defensive battles and struggles. So I get more enjoyment out of college because I'm just such a defensive.
No defensive
guy.
3 seconds in college. I mean, you can just stack guys.
And I mean, even in high school, like especially for certain teams to slow it down, every possession matters more in certain types of games. So it can almost have like it's weird to use a weird analogy, like a football type feel to it. Like when it's like, oh, if you go on a 4-0 run, it might blow this game open right now. You know what I mean? So I can see that. But yeah, the NBA is just such a better product, especially over the last decade where it's really like speeded up and paces and the spacing and everything. I just feel like college has made like moves towards that in the last 2 or 3 years. But there was actually a time when the college game was getting so slow comparatively to the NBA game that it was actually kind of rough to watch.
All right, lightning round question number 2, and this goes for anything. It is any level, high school, college, NBA, doesn't matter. World, Olympics, doesn't matter. And I ask this because of my love of for you listeners out there who don't know me. Those are my dogs barking in the background, by the way. But for all of you who don't know me, I am a short man. I'm about 5'7". So I've always had respect for the guys who are huge and tall. So greatest of all time center. Greatest of all time center. Go.
Will Purdue. No.
On CONCAC.
I mean, me and Ben kind of agree that Wilt is the best. To argue the other side of it, Hakeem to me is so good because of how he moved and how he could defend it and shoot and step away. And so I'll play devil's advocate and go Hakeem, even though I kind of think that Kareem and Will are better.
And part of it is skill set, right? Like I think you could say Kareem, I think or Hakeem, because they got so much skill set. What I think Wilt is to me a slightly better version of Shaq because he's just more locked in terms of being in shape all the time. If Shaq was in shape and you allowed him to bang, I don't think anybody can stop that. So I'd like to give a shout out for Shaq too, but skill set, I see where you're coming from with Hakeem or even Kareem because the skyhook's unstoppable.
And best is so subjective because I've talked to some people who, to them, best is skill based, where they would say, okay, Shaq was dominant, but Jamal Crawford's a better basketball player because he can dribble better, shoot better, pass better. Only thing Shaq can do better is be big. You know what I'm saying? Like, so.
Though the people that say that kind of stuff, though, you didn't.
I'm not saying it's right.
Shaq was so dominant, and he can do stuff. Like he had the drop steps, the hooks, and everything.
100%. It's just, do you place a bigger wager on dominance or actual basketball talent and skill? Yeah. You know, so I mean, I still go dominance, but people have that argument.
And me personally, I can't get into the topics of Shaq would have dominated Will. Well, you don't know that because if you would have removed Shaq from the 90s, 2000s and put him back in the 60s or maybe taken Wilt and let him be born a couple decades later, you don't know what Wilt could have done with the modern technology, the modern skills of the game, the worth that, because those guys didn't have AAU playing back then, it's just. Well,
here's what we do know, and this is why I say Wilt, is that we do know that Wilt was like a great athlete, even aside from basketball. Like in terms of just his incredible strength for the era, like he worked at, like Schwarzenegger said, he didn't see anybody stronger when they worked out together. Like he was a high jump champion, a 100-meter champion. Like we're talking about a dude that's an elite athlete on top of being bigger and stronger than everybody. And Shaq only got there for a very brief period of time in his career where he was actually in elite shape while being super agile and big and all that. And what's a little different about how the game changed over time, Shaq was always really hard to ref because do you call a defensive foul every time he's grabbed, or do you call an offensive foul every time he drills you with his shoulder? If you actually watch a lot of old Wilt games, he doesn't just drill people with the shoulder and dunk every time like Shaq did, even though he could have done it even worse against the competition because the rules wouldn't have allowed it. Right. So he did like real weird finger rolls and bank shots and stuff. I think, you know, if you allow Wilt to just run over everybody, who's going to stop him?
So
Shaq and, you know.
Good.
Shaq and him are comparable in that sense, but I think Wilt's a better version. That's
But to me, that's where those four, meaning Wilt, Kareem, Hakeem, and Shaq, set themselves apart.
Yes.
It's from the 70s, 60s till now. Maybe not now the way the game is played, but till the 2000s. Those four could have dominated any era they were in, to me.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at the end of the day, though, you're both wrong. The greatest center of all time is Greg Ostertag. Greg Ostertag. All right, moving on. So you know a question was going to come up North Carolina because it's me and that's what I do. So I got a North Carolina coming your way here. And Ben, I made it one that you would be able to answer as well. Not so much Ryan, but all right, you get one choice here. Dean Smith or Roy Williams? Who are you taking as your coach? Dean Smith or Roy Williams? I see Ryan's wheels turning.
Go ahead, Ryan.
This might be the hardest question Ryan has been asked. I don't know, but I know who I would take personally, but
history says take Dean. I take Roy because of the pace of play and how they get up and down the court.
Yeah, I like the fast.
I love Dean, but people don't remember that was a slow four corners offense that wears you down and just held the ball and stalled out. Roy will push the pace from the tip to the finish. Yeah. So I'll go Roy.
Actually, I think I don't remember where I saw this first or heard this first, but somebody said that the only person to ever keep Jordan from average 20 a game his whole life was
Dean Smith.
Was Dean Smith because of the style of play, right?
Yeah.
So I'd probably go Roy too because I think he actually brought in a lot of the basically fast breaking off of everything, right? Secondary break.
Yeah, their secondary break is unreal.
Unreal. And if you're watching, if you're not like me, they're starting to finally this season. They're finally starting to get into that. All his young guards, they're finally starting to pick up on it. And look what they've done. You know, six straight. Where are they at now? 5 straight wins, I think. And
from a coaching's perspective, I'm a huge fan of secondary break. I like it a lot.
Oh, I love it. I'm a fast break guy myself. The one thing that I will say though about Roy Williams, and a lot of people don't know this maybe or don't realize it, but his first national championship at North Carolina with Sean May and Raymond Felton, Rashad McCants, Jawad Williams, you know, those guys, he didn't recruit any of them. He just came in and
Matt Doherty.
Yeah, Matt Doherty
stocked the pantry and they got kicked out.
So, you know, Roy Williams has brought in some amazing talent since then. And Marvin Williams, who the hero of that season, a lot could say, you know, this amazing freshman that he was, Roy did bring in. But still, Roy Williams is my guy. So I got to go with Roy. All right, moving on. Sticking with the fact that we just had a question on coaching. And we're all coaches ourselves and love to coach. Right now, not retired, they are coaching right now. Who is the best coach in the NBA? Best coach in the NBA right now.
You go first on this one.
I know who you're going to say, I think.
You know, the Spurs haven't had as much success the last year and a half, but I mean, obviously that was bound to come at some point. But in terms of just the longevity of success, and maybe it's hard to separate out having Tim Duncan for the vast majority of the years, but it seems like Greg Popovich is a pretty good choice here for the best coach in the NBA.
I am super biased, and I didn't want to, but just thinking of what he's done, Eric Spoelstra is my pick. Yeah. If you think when he started, they had nobody in D-Wade. He gets the big three. First year, he tries to go traditional, big guy, and clog the paint for LeBron. What's he do? Revolutionary, changing it up, big guys, run the ball through LeBron, even though he's basically playing the four, make everything easier for him. LeBron, they leave, Bosch gets blood clots. He does it with other guys, Joe Johnson, Luol Deng. They get to almost a game away from the Eastern Conference Finals, and then he did it again this last year. He's really put in. We love him. Those dribble handoff, those options.
Yeah.
You know, they made an offense work through guys who aren't guys you run offenses through. Bam Adebayo is the guy you typically would see an offense ran through, and they run stuff through him. They run stuff through Duncan Robinson. Like how creative he's been offensively. He was already a great defensive coach. The way they mix the zone in. To me, him or Brad Stevens is that. I don't want to say new blood, but those two would be my choice.
You know, and I want to give one more shout out as you say that, because, I think as the generations go forward, Spoelstra, Brad Stevens are going to be really good coaches for a long time. But the league as a whole has been affected by – I don't know if any coach is affected how the game's played more now that's still around than Mike D'Antoni.
Yeah, that's facts.
Technically an assistant for Steve Nash now.
Yeah.
But the way the game's played – is basically like his fever dream of the 7 seconds or Suns and they didn't even get to where it's at now. And everybody plays like that. So it's Mike D'Antoni's league to some degree.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to me though is the fact that you two, and I'd have to fact check this, and maybe I'll do that at our next break. But you brought up Greg Popovich and Eric Spoelstra. I think those are the two most tenured NBA coaches in the league right now, right? I can't.
Pop has to be the most.
Yeah.
And Spo took over, I believe, in 07 or 08.
Yeah. So they have to be
well,
around.
And because Doc Rivers has bounced a couple times, I guess it would be
exactly.
Right.
And especially that now just with this move to Philly. So that's interesting. I give my props to Eric Spoelstra though, because just what he did last season. I mean, I know it was a weird.
It was a weird season
with the bubble and all that, but the fact that he took that crew and I like. And I like how he uses. I'm a big Tyler Herro fan. I like the way he plays his game and what he's done with him, and took a rookie shooter and made him into kind of a stud. And just 1 year ago. All right, last question, and unfortunately, you guys kind of killed this question for me in the draft stages of it, but it's the most basic basketball question of all time. Who's the GOAT? Michael Jordan, LeBron James?
I mean, I'm going to go with Jordan. And I think there's a lot of other players that could be discussed there too. But to me, it's Jordan, even though I recognize even as a Jordan fan that LeBron's got a really good case at this point that's only getting stronger.
I said LeBron jokingly, but in all seriousness, this is a question, with all due respect, that I don't engage in, only because I hate the culture around this question. I hate the internet trolls that will argue basically that one or the other sucks and the other is so much better, when in all reality they're so good in their own right that
I think
or the other,
they've got to be 1 and 2.
Well, the other thing that I hate about this debate, and it is similar to what Steele is saying, is when we do it, we end up devaluing all their teammates and all their competition and all this other stuff, depending on which side of the case you want to be on. And it's completely unfair, right? Like, is it necessary to destroy, everything about 90s basketball or big up Scottie Pippen, or then devalue him, or, make Mo Williams into a star, or whatever you have to do to be these arguments? It's stupid.
I don't know, but there's two quotes that stick out in my mind that kind of separate them. Is Michael Jordan said, "I never called Larry Bird and said, hey, do you want to team up and win a championship together?" I never had to. And then I don't know if you've seen this latest one, but and it might just be a meme. I haven't researched it enough to know if Michael Jordan actually said it, but a reporter asked Michael Jordan, said, "Okay, who would win, you and the '97 Bulls, or
LeBron's Lakers.
the LeBron's Lakers?" And Jordan said, "Oh, we would win." And the reporter said, "Okay, by how much?" And Michael Jordan said, "Oh, probably only by 2 or 3." And the reporter said, "That close of a game?" And Michael said, "Well, most of us are getting into our 60s by now."
It sounds like something maybe he would have said, but I don't think he actually said that.
Yeah, I don't think he said that.
But I guess that is my hatred for that question is well, no, is
I hear you. Yeah.
Michael said he didn't ask Larry Bird to play, so that makes him better. So that's like Horace Grant told LeBron he didn't ask to play, so he's better than LeBron because he didn't ask to play.
And honestly, it's like I said, it's apples and oranges. You never know what it is unless you get the two of them in the prime.
And not only that, but like, there's also going to be this debate of longevity versus peak. That's going to be an interesting one, I think. Eras, you could make that argument at some point too, but like LeBron, I think, is going to end up having longevity stats. He's going to have the bulk stats. He's going to have maybe if he plays long enough, the Lakers are good enough, he might even catch him in championships and all this. But
the part of that intrigues me more than LeBron versus MJ is the amount of people that would take Kobe over LeBron. To me, is more than those would take LeBron over it. It's weird to me. And I was a Kobe fan, but I don't think that was particularly close. Kobe and LeBron.
Right.
So,
and I mean, and there's a lot of other players that I think deserve to be in that conversation too. But that's who I'd pick as Jordan.
So, at the end of the day, I think we can all agree. North Carolina grad, Rick Fox, greatest basketball player of all time. All right. I got those from Bill Walton, by the way. Greg Oster tagged Rick Fox. He said that one time. But anyways, we're going to go ahead and take our last break here. We're going to come back and we'll have one more little debate and we'll wrap this thing up. Thanks for tuning in to Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Welcome back to the Give and Go Basketball Podcast. Again, host Mitch Shreve, along with my two stars, Ryan Steele, and coming all the way from Zoom meeting, Ben Sperry. So we're just going to end the show with just the kind of that we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA season and its start and taking off, and just kind of because me personally. I think there's been a lot of big surprises in this season, and I was looking at the stats, and most notably the records of the teams. And there's no clear cut, I'm going to run away with this season, or I'm the heavy favorite of this season, just with their records and stuff. So, I think I've been starting with Ben a lot, mostly this night. So I'm going to start with Steele over here tonight. Ryan, what's been your biggest surprises of the season so far?
I went more individual than team stuff. I look at a guy like Jeremy Grant, Benny. I mean, I've always loved him in the roles he's played. That defender, long defender off the bench, it can guard the wing, can guard a big if he has to. Was never a huge offensive threat, but could knock down a low corner shot, could get in transition, dunk and finish. We're looking at 24, 6, and 3 on 45% shooting. And now, like any, we could always do this with surprises in the NBA and any sport, really. You got to look at usage, obviously. You get a new role in a new team. You're used a lot more. Of course, your numbers will rise. But the fact we're this far into the season now and he's still over 24 points, to me, it's kind of crazy for a guy that was always known as a defender. So that's one. My probably overall biggest surprise, because I thought this guy was washed by watching the Eastern Conference Finals, is Gordon Hayward in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. I know they're not great as a team, but dude's getting after it.
Yeah.
I mean, 23 points, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. 50% shooting, looks way better, just looks healthier than he has been.
I think he just got healthy finally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then my last two, it shouldn't be really a surprise because how great he is. but he just seems to up it every year now. Is Jokic? What can you say? I mean, the dude. If we're going by numbers, and me and you love numbers, dude. I mean, he's the best player in the league right now. I mean, what he's doing is unbelievable. It's almost a trip dub, 27, 12, and 9,
Right.
almost shooting 60%, gets them into everything offensively.
He runs their offense.
I mean, he does it all. I mean, he's not a terribly great defender, but he's not awful.
Actually, in the defensive statistics, is they're not great, but they actually show him being pretty good this year.
And then my last one, again, a little homerific on this. The slow start for the Miami Heat, decimated by some corona, issues there. Jimmy came back last night, had a huge game. They held on for a win against the Kings. I think they can recover and make the playoffs, but what's going to hurt them is they're going to draw a tough first-round matchup.
Yeah.
They're probably going to hold on and get like a 7th seed and have to face the Nets or the Celtics in the first round. So those are my surprises, the Heat coming slow after making the finals.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, in terms of teams, the Heat slow start was a little surprising to me because they were so great in the bubble. And I mean, obviously a lot of that's injury related, but them getting off to a slow start was a bit of a surprise for me. The Jazz being as good as they have been so far is a bit surprising. Not that they weren't good. I mean, they were really good even in the playoffs last year, had a tough matchup with the Nuggets in the first round, who I really like, even again this year. But they've gotten really hot in the last couple weeks and are now 15-4. And actually, even the more advanced metrics for teams shows them as one of the elite teams in the league right now. Mike Conley finally playing well again is a big part of that because he didn't play well last year. But even Donovan Mitchell's continued growth, Gobert is great, and I don't think people appreciate him very much. The Jazz being as good as they've been has been a surprise. I'm not surprised by Jokic, and maybe I'm surprised that he's doing it in the regular season because he's been doing this in the playoffs when he plays big minutes and plays higher usage. But I'm a huge Jokic fan. One of the surprises for me was Dallas has been kind of crappy because I thought Luka Doncic and the Mavericks would be really good this year. Their offense has been kind of terrible this year after being statistically one of the better ones in the league this season.
Kristaps did miss time early. I think he's just getting back after surgery.
Yeah. So that was one of my surprises, just Dallas not playing particularly well.
Yeah.
I guess we'll probably get into this one and more. I'm not surprised that Harden got traded, but the way that went down was a little.
Oh, we are going to get into it.
It was disappointing, maybe is the better word, because he kind of gave up on the Rockets and forced his way out.
Well, you saying that, my biggest surprise though, and I kind of want to slap you both for not bringing them up, but
Colin Sexton,
watch out, Colin Sexton.
I knew it.
My Cleveland Cavaliers. Right now, if the playoffs were to start today, they get themselves into it. I got to give my boy Andre Drummond a shout out for sticking around, and he's actually playing very, very well. I'm pretty sure he's still averaging a double-double, and a lot of their younger guys are playing good, and that's with Sexton and Garland missing out on a couple games here, and Drummond's missed out on a couple games. So, watch out. But they're playing good, and they beat up on the New Jersey Nets, which brings us to my next big thing. So obviously, the biggest thing going on right now in the NBA is the fact that Harden was traded to the Nets.
Right.
So forming the new big three with Harden. Kyrie, my longtime Cleveland Cavs guy, and Kevin Durant. So what do you think that impact has brought to the NBA league now?
I mean, impact-wise on just the East alone, I mean, talent-wise, it immediately makes them the favorite to me.
Yeah.
I heard people, and I've argued with people, that they gave up too much to get James Harden. And I like Jared Allen. He's a good little player. But when somebody says he's a good little player, you're not that great. You know what I mean? Like, you're cool. Like, you can defend. You can defend the rim. You can hit a little midi. You can finish around the rim. Cool. Karis LeVert, he's a good little player. Like, he can start on some teams, be a sixth man, a great player for some teams. When it gets to the playoffs, those aren't players that win you games. Stars win you games in the NBA. They have 3 stars now.
Yeah.
So, I mean, to me, the only impact of the league now is the balance now. The East has powers now.
Mhm.
You got the Bucks. The Heat were the reigning team. The Sixers look good. The Nets are now the favorite of a heavy East, and the Celtics are in there too. So
Yeah.
that's my impact, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have a really high ceiling offensively too, because not only that, but they were able to retain Joe Harris, who's like
Yes.
an elite shooter. Harden being there and being able to run the pick and roll at such a high level actually somewhat helped DeAndre Jordan look like the Clippers DeAndre Jordan again to some degree.
Yeah.
So that they're really high potential on offense. Their defense isn't going to be elite, but
that's where I wanted to go next with it.
But they might be able to prove, and this will be the interesting thing for the NBA, whether you can actually win all offense and no defense. It might, again, and what's funny is it's Nash, who had his best years under D'Antoni. D'Antoni's one of his assistants. It's going to be interesting because they don't really necessarily run the same things, but whether you can play just a lot of fast offensive-minded basketball and pull it off because you got enough talent. I will say one of my surprises that dovetails with this is Durant looking as good as he has.
Off that injury.
We weren't sure, right? And then he comes in and it's like, well, will he be like a top 10 player still? Will he be a top 20 player still really good, but not himself? No, he looks like he's every bit what he was. And that's amazing and great for the league too. It's good to have Kevin Durant play great.
But so the defensive thing is where I want to touch on, because when the trade happened, cool. Kyrie was off burning sage in a tent somewhere for 20 days. We didn't know where he was. He's come back. But out of that 5, KD, as great as he is, he was a very good defensive player in OKC the last few years and his time in Golden State. He was a good defensive player. Hasn't been so far in Brooklyn. Kyrie has never been a good defender. James Harden has never been a good defender. Now, you're now looking at them not as the only superstar on a team where you can put defenders around them. Yeah. Those 3 have to be on the court at all times. So you're out there with at least 3 guys who don't play great defense, and that is where I think could hurt them in the playoffs. I still make them the favorite, but that should, like you said, should be interesting to see that. Have we ever seen a team with bad defenders?
Mm-hmm. The only thing that works for them is, on the other hand, when it gets tight in the playoffs, usually what happens is all the pace and space stops working as much, and it
slows down its ISO for sure.
And it comes down to who can individually score. And they got 3 guys that can do it as good as anybody in the league, and among maybe the better isolation scorers ever. I mean, in terms of Harden and Durant in particular, even Kyrie's spectacular, don't get me wrong, but like in terms of pure efficiency, Durant's pull-up jumper, what are you going to do about it? Harden's ability to do the step back and draw fouls going to the basket.
Agreed. But when they get to the Lakers, perhaps maybe in finals, and they get to the Bucks or they get to the Celtics, when we've seen in the playoffs, people slow Kyrie, people slow James. We've never seen anybody slow KD, not even LeBron. But we've seen people, average guys who are good defenders, take on that role against James Harden, and he shot 2 for 20, 3 for 17. Nobody's doing that to Anthony Davis and LeBron. You could, maybe the others get shut down, but you could throw out, just think of Drew Holiday against James Harden now in a matchup. And now you got maybe Giannis on KD. Will they be able to guard them on the other? You know what I'm saying? Like that's where
That's true. But having a third guy does make it tough, right? Like, if you're going to use those 2 matchups, then who's going to try to slow down a Kyrie Irving, who's still, an elite one-on-one scorer that I don't know.
For sure. And that's what I say. They have to be the favorites in the East off of pure talent.
And I'm just going to take you back to, and I don't mean to pain you anything, but I'm just going to take you back to another big 3 that I knew. D-Wade, LeBron, and Chris Bosh, who did not win an NBA title their first season together. Shout out to the Dallas Mavericks and Dirk Nowitzki on that one. But this leads me to my last question. And we'll see what we get out of this one over here. And I'm pointing at Steele if you can't see me at home, but or if you're listening and not watching. But how do we think this NBA season's going to end up? Give me your predictions. NBA Finals, go Ben.
NBA Finals.
Yeah, we're calling it early, bud. We're calling
Yeah,
it
there's
early.
I that's tough because I mean there's just so much season left. I think the Lakers are still the favorite until they aren't. I mean, just because that's the way it works. The East is going to be really interesting. I'm gonna give the Sixers a nod. Just see, I mean, if there's a team that's just been playing really well, I'm gonna give them a shot to say, yeah, why not? Lakers, Sixers.
All right. Steele?
I start this with the disclaimer that I hate predictions, only because nobody knows jack. You can watch all these shows, ESPN, Inside the NBA on TNT. They don't ever get it right.
Yeah.
So our predictions, hear this. My prediction does not mean anything, but I do think the Lakers should be the favorites to come out of the West, and I think KD and the Nets should come out of the East. I want that at least. I want a KD LeBron finals. Big, and I know there's other stars in that, which is cool, but I want that KD LeBron, round 3, 4,
and with again with different teams yet again for both of them too,
right,
which is unreal.
Weirdest thing, So LeBron's done it now. What with 4 teams? Well,
I mean the Cavs twice, but
twice, right? So 4 different eras almost.
Yeah.
And now KD is trying to do it with his third team. Pretty cool stuff,
right.
For sure.
Well, unfortunately, I hate to end the show this way, but you're both wrong. It's going to be the Cleveland Cavaliers against the Los Angeles Lakers in the final.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
But listen. If it's who I wanted it to be, I would totally want the Denver Nuggets there because I just love watching Jokic play. And
I almost said Ben wants Jokic versus Kelly Olynyk as the big.
Well, I don't know about Kelly Olynyk. I don't know if I'd go with Heat, but maybe Heat because they're fun to watch too.
I'm just playing.
I don't even know who I'd pick from the East, but I would love if Jokic got to the finals.
He's got to pump the brakes on the Cavs because they got a lot of time to craft a bet on this season. Yeah. Hey, there's a lot of missed Andre Drummond free throws coming since season.
LeBron left, can a guy dream? But, all right. Well, hey, thanks for tuning into our first inaugural Give and Go basketball podcast. Appreciate you. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, the Give and Go 3. Feel free to email us. Let us know what you think. If there's topics you want to hear us discuss, the giveandgo3@gmail.com. We're going to hopefully, post this bad boy all over the place. Next week, we want to go through and give a look at who we picked and who we think we would win on our all decades team. We're going to have all new topics. I'm going to have all new lightning round questions. Again, make sure you follow us Facebook, Give and Go 3, and email us giveandgo3@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. We appreciate you. We love you for listening. Thank you so much. Thank you to my 2 stars of the show, Ben, Sperry, Ryan, Steele. You guys are amazing. I'm having fun doing this with you guys. It's been a great journey. I do have to give a shout out to my music teacher at school, Rick Staff, for putting the music together for us for this podcast. Thank you so much, and I hope you tune in next week. We'll see you later. Thank you.
I'm Ben Sperry, and this was the Give and Go Basketball Podcast.